Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to our question and answer session today. I'm Wale Ladipo. We face huge challenges in our world today, the challenges of mental health. Wherever you look, we have somebody, somewhere, who is fighting a ferocious battle of mental health. We have anxiety, stress, and a whole bunch of traumatic experiences that people have gone through that are basically inundating their body with regards to the symptoms that they face. So the purpose of this session today is to help people understand their mental health situation just a little bit better. We know that the clarity of our understanding decides the energy of our recovery. So if we understand why the brain behaves the way it does and why we have a series of symptoms, somatic symptoms that are just overwhelming our awareness, we will start to understand better how to self-adjust, self-correct, self-regulate. So I'm Wale Ladipo, I'm the lead trainer and uh, uh, psychotherapist for the Mind Body Brief organization. Some of you have probably attended a whole bunch of our workshops up and down the country over the years before. So this is just our way of helping our communities, supporting others, and just providing validation and reassurance with regards to what is already working for you. So some of you have joined me today on Zoom. So welcome everyone. And I'm just going to take questions straight away. If you are watching online, you could just post your questions under the video. If you can see me on online, post the questions. I'm going to be catching those questions that you post on Facebook Live. So we're going to get started. As I've explained in my little introductory message there, if you just want to mute yourself to get started, some of you who are with me here on Zoom, just unmute yourself to ask your first question. You don't have to, show your camera if you don't, as long as you allow us to hear you by unmuting. Just mute your audio, or some of you might prefer to type in your questions. So you might use the live chat with regards to your questions. So it's going to get started. What question have you brought for me today? I've got a little orientation to start with, but just in case some of you have got a question to start with, I'm happy to take one or two questions before I move into just a little bit of explanation with regards to adaptive energy for survival. Okay, so what we do know is that the anxiety center that we all have the ability to access as a positive agenda. So the purpose of anxiety is actually positive from the outset. We know that we have an adaptive system that we often refer to as your fight or your flight reaction. And the purpose of the adaptive mechanism is to enhance our chances for survival. The chances for your adaptive perpetuation of our existence as humans. So if you're going through troubles, you're going through problems in your life, you expect your autonomic fight or flight response to be activated. If you don't feel fearful, you don't feel a sense of dread when you are threatened, then you could actually be asking yourself that something must be wrong with me. The fact that you feel anxious when there are tough times that you're going through at the moment suggests that your adaptive, autonomic, sympathetic response is working correctly. So the next time you feel anxious or you feel a bit of palpitations or some tingling in your arms or your legs because of a reaction to a stressor in your environment, say to your anxiety center, thank you. I know you are responding to my environment. Now, what we do know is that it is possible to over deploy your anxiety pathway, your stress response. If the stressors are prolonged, they're repeated, they're fierce, to the extent that you start to increase the chronicity of the activation of your fight or flight response, chances are the initial purpose of the anxiety center that's supposed to help you to survive could be compromised. Why? Because very quickly, your entire nervous system, we have to learn how to move very quickly into a defensive state. Humans can trigger their defensive pathway, but that should not be the all in all over consuming pathway for activation. So you activate your defensive mechanism, and all the energy of your defense mechanism returns back to baseline so that you can socially engage, you can love, you can feel free, you can create a future without fear. But what happens is that trauma and chronic stress forces the entire nervous system to move into a defensive state, fight or flight state. If you have anxiety, you have over exaggeration or over mobilization of your stress response. Now, if you've been extremely traumatized, it's possible that your mobilization energy, your fight or flight, is also being broken down. It's been over depleted. And what you may be experiencing in your body is a numbing experience, a frozen state. That is a sign that the fight or flight has been broken down. So you are now in a state that we know as the immobility or immobilization state, a state of shutdown, of hiding away, of dissociation. You become numbed out, almost as if you prefer not to be seen because the battle can no longer be fought. You can no longer run away, escape. It's no longer possible. But the initial outset of your sympathetic nervous system is to readapt your energy, your internal state, to be able to be more adaptive relative to the problems that we face in our environment. And we, unfortunately, a lot of us, we've been overly exposed to traumatic experiences, and our adaptive energy is compromised. It now favors or is biased towards defensive state. You fight, you flight, or you freeze state. It's possible to transform, but you have to cooperate with your own autonomic nervous system to start to gradually downregulate your excess fight or flight activation and start to upregulate your relaxation response. And how do you do that? You do that because you do that by conscientiously, by deliberately sending signals of safety into your own energy system. Very tough because you have to do it long enough. If you send the signals of safety, of self-compassion, of motivation, of inspiration, of mindfulness, of meditation, all of which are activating your healing pathways. Gradually, you recalibrate the anxiety center for a low graded anxiety activation. It's almost as if you are retraining the anxiety center that your world is not as dangerous as it thinks. And before you know it, your anxiety quotient start to be downgraded to a level where you start to normalize gradually. That is very important. In different types of courses that we run across the country and also overseas, we take people into this journey and looking at the brain functions and different areas of the brain that studies have implicated, and we move them into a step-by-step guide for recovery. So let me get some questions going. Thank you, Sanchia. You are making some comments on Facebook. I went to one of your workshops and it totally opened my understanding of anxiety. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that. A question here. I'm struggling with insomnia and stress in this COVID-19 time. Any suggestions to self-regulate this situation? So there's a question there: insomnia and stress. So what we do know is that insomnia, your lack of sleep, is a stressor. Okay. And stress is also an agent that could move you into a state of sleeplessness, insomnia. So if you cannot sleep, it's a stressor. But stress causes inability to sleep. So what we do know is that we have, I'm just going to answer it from the biochemical perspective. Now, we have two neurotransmitters that are crucial to sleep, basically. Number one, your serotonin, and number two, your melatonin. Serotonin is one of the most powerful neurotransmitters in the body. It does a whole bunch of things. It's not just a feel good neurotransmitter. Studies have also shown that your serotonin is a primary neurotransmitter for your gut, yes, for your bowel. And also, with regards to your sleeping state, serotonin plays a pivotal role because you convert serotonin into melatonin as your photoreceptors in your eyes are sensing the night time. That is when serotonin starts to be converted to melatonin and you start to feel sleepy, hopefully, unless you're you're on on high stimulants. So what we are saying is that if you suffer from chronic insomnia, there is most certain, it is very certain that there is an hormonal dysregulation going on. And we can also connect that to environmental factors because we know that stress, chronic stress, can dysregulate your hormones. So what happens is that your autonomic nervous system, the middle part of the brain that we refer to as the limbic system, as a part, as a region, an office within that department where the chemicals are produced. If you've attended some of our workshops, you've probably are aware of this part. It's known as the hypothalamus. And the purpose of the hypothalamus is to create stimulating chemicals, hormones, and other stimulating neurotransmitters, meaning that when they're secreted, they allow other glands, other regions of the brain to secrete other hormones. So what we do now is that if you, by the way, this particular part of the brain also produces your stress chemicals. So if you've gone through a lot in your life and the baseline cortisol levels have risen beyond, to a critical mass, studies are, studies have shown that the serotonin pathways are depleted in stress, chronic stress, and in traumatic experiences. So if you have little circulating serotonin molecules going in your circulatory system, there's little or no molecules of serotonin to be converted to melatonin at night. So what we also know is that the the pineal gland does the conversion, the pineal gland is in the limbic system area, is also affected by the excess cortisol levels. So the receptors in the pineal glands that's supposed to monitor the levels of serotonin in the circulating bloodstream are also those receptors have been worn out by the stress hormones. So what we're looking at, we're looking at a stress-induced situation more often than not. This time has been extremely hard for everybody. COVID-19 has devastated the entire human race. And why it's so prevalent is because it attacks the very powerful tool that humans rely upon the most to self-regulate. Harland, you mentioned self-regulation, that's very powerful. What is that particular tool that we use to self-regulate? Other people. Yes, social connections. Yes, social connection is so powerful. It's one of the most powerful protective factors against mental health. Being able to connect with like-minded people. Now, when we're talking about connection in psychological terms, is stronger than using a computer. A computer, not like what you're doing right now. This is not connection. I can't even see anybody. I'm basically speaking to my computer. So, with regards to your nervous system, this is called biological insult. Biological insult because I'm laughing just at my own computer. Nobody's laughing back. Now, real social connection takes place when we are face to face because most of the body language communication, most of the communication that is established between humans are body language communications. Studies have shown that over 56% of the communication that takes place through the body language. Your words only account for about 6 or 7% of them. It's incredible. So we miss out on a whole chunk of communication during this lockdown. A lot of us cannot move. We reduce our exercise levels, and also the self-regulatory mechanism that has been encoded into the fabrics of our nervous system with regards to what we know as co-regulation. One person is regulating the other through a mutual agreement to come together, to look at each other, to tell stories, to reminisce on past funny things, and also just to be together to co-regulate our emotions together. That is missing. So what I want to advise you is to increase your energy level through exercise, nature. I'm glad that things are opening up right now. Nature is very powerful. You need to increase your energy level to an extent that your your endocrine system, where the hormones are secreted, they are in a flaccid state at the moment, in a suppressive state. So the exercise level has to be long enough. A lot of us under exercise. For example, it's recommended that you walk between 40 minutes and 60 minutes every day. You walk as based on your pace, and eventually you increase your pace to get to the level of the pace that you use when you are late. Whenever you're late going somewhere, you know how you walk. And you do that for at least 21 days. At that moment, your energy level starts to rise so much. And when you walk, practice mindfulness, connect with nature, move into a state of gratitude, thankfulness, all those things will work together to elevate your serotonin levels. And if there are no other complications such as depression, which is a very more complex biochemical state, you should start to see your energy level increase. Because when you increase your activities, especially walking, you can do other aerobic exercises, but make sure that you include the exercise that integrates nature. When you walk, it's a slow pace. That is why walking has been rated as the number one a mental health neuro exercise. It's a slow paced exercise. You connect with nature more than when you run or when you are on your bike. So unless there are other complications than we have other issues there, but try that. Understand the fact that you can't sleep when your entire body is inundated by the mobilization chemical that we know as cortisol. So the entire brain is a state of hyperarousal, and it's impossible to shut down the brain. Usually, when your melatonin level rises at night when you are feeling sleepy, at that moment the cortisol level should be dropping. But if you cannot convert enough serotonin to melatonin, that triggering system doesn't happen because there has to be a threshold of melatonin to start to reduce the cortisol level. There are the different steps during this sleep state. We have different realms of sleep state. The first state, which is is called the stage one and two, which is the shallow wave state of sleep. At that moment, that is when your cortisol level should be reducing. When you get to the stage two, stage three, and four, which is the deep wave sleep, at that moment, the entire cortisol level should have returned to baseline so that you sleep deeper. And that is where a lot of repairing, a lot of rejuvenation work is carried out by your brain. Then we have the five and six levels of sleep, which is the REM state, rapid eye movement. That is when you are more likely to dream. And all the cycles are repeated every 60 to 90 minutes. So, but what happens is that if you cannot reduce your cortisol levels, going into a shallow wave sleep, you have no chance to hit the REM sleep or the deep wave sleep that's supposed to rejuvenate you, perform MOT and servicing to entire brain region. So you are a mess. You wake up too tired. Also, when you're supposed to go to work, that's when you fall into a deep sleep. That is not enough. Sleep is very important. You have to find a way to sleep. If you can't sleep, 12, consider consider supplements. Some people find valerian roots very useful. Some people find a bit of magnesium useful before they go to bed. If you can't sleep at all, you have to see your GP. You have to see your health professional. It's so important. Even that the brain can degrade so much without sleep because when you're sleeping, the entire a whole bunch of things happen to your brain, like detoxification, like a consolidation of memories, like making sure that the unused pathways in the brain are serviced because we don't use a whole bunch of pathways in our brain every day. And they are not serviced when you're sleeping, guess what? You know that little expression, use it or lose it. So a lot of brain neurons and neural networks that we've not been able to use during the waking hours when you're sleeping, especially during the REM sleep stage. That is when the brain helps you use those pathways so that they are kept active just in case you need them. I hope that's helpful. Good, good, good. Now, I'll take some questions here on Facebook. Jane, thank you, Jane. The way you describe the science really helps to make sense of something that can at times seem ridiculous. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoy that. Another question. How can I help my son who's 13 and has ADHD with confidence? His anxiety is stopping him do things because he's scared of not being good enough. So your question is how can you ask? How can you help your 13 years old who has ADHD? Now, what we do know about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is that it's a brain-driven condition, not a will-driven. And that's very powerful. We'll actually stress this in our workshops. Now, a brain-driven condition, that means there are distinct neurological differences between an ADHD brain and a non-ADHD brain. So that's the first thing we have to, ingrain to people who have this condition. It is not your fault. You are not to be blamed. The brain is wired in a certain way that the generations of this world, the people of this world don't understand. I always crack this joke in our live events that if you have a world and that world, the only people who live in that world are ADHD brainy people. All of them are ADHD brains. In other words, they have attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder. Now, if you bring your non ADHD brain into that world, people will think you're weird. They'll start to stereotype you. You start to be to be persecuted. And before you know it, you start to collect little traumas, which is exactly what is going on with people with ADHD. We judge them, even without any verbal communication. People start to feel as if they're different, something is wrong with them. And that's what possibly your 13-year-old is feeling. And that is feeding directly into the anxiety center. So, Christina, if you're listening to me, the first thing to understand to do is to get the orientation right. ADHD is a brain-driven condition that is full of strengths, not weaknesses. It's because the majority of the people in this world has a brain that is that is a little bit a little bit conservative, a little bit overly regulated. An ADHD brain is a free spirit brain. And studies in the Silicon Valley, have confirmed that the majority of the people who are changing our world today, they either have ADHD or autism. Why? Because they can think outside of the box. It's not weakness, it's strength. Our labeling has made it as a disorder so much because many people in our world have a different type of brain. So let your 13-year-old son understand that. By the way, if you want to know more about this, go on our website. We have a particular ADHD course that will go deeper. Will be well equipped to be able to help him better. And the thing is that once the orientation changes, the mental paradigm changes, that will start to affect the anxiety center. At the moment, the anxiety center is feeding off the negative intrusive thinking of your son based on the little traumas, I mean, little injustices, stigmas that he's collected over the years. And, and as a result of that, the anxiety center is going crazy. It's going crazy on him. The second thing I would advise is plenty of love. Yes, plenty of unconditional love. Send signals of safety constantly. Let it be that in your home, in your own presence, the anxiety center in his brain that is going crazy on him feels a sense of serenity, sense of tranquility, a sense of safety. The more safety cues we send into the anxiety center, the less it activates. So I hope that's useful. Or like as I've said, if you want more, get on the ADHD and anxiety course that we do. We have more information there. Now let me look at some other question. Uh, does your knowledge of anxiety and panic disorder come from lived experience or theoretical knowledge? Yes, I used to have anxiety. Not just anxiety, I have traumas growing up that shaped my education, shaped my what I'm doing today. So from lived experiences, interacting with research, studies, and a whole bunch of other advanced courses and training and different other things I've done over the years. So, but the way I explain it is from my own personal perspective. So that's what some people usually say they find is useful, kind of making out the complexity of science and make them simpler so that other people can relate the information directly to their own lives. So that is that. Let's see whether we have some other questions here. Okay, just make sure that I've not missed anything at all. Good, good, good. Now, I want to show you why some of you are preparing for your questions. I want to show you something, especially some of you who are with me here on Zoom. I want to show you something from my computer just to explain some of these things that I've been sharing. So hopefully you find it useful. Just very quickly, why some of you are still preparing your questions online or offline. So that will be great. I will catch some of these questions later on. Now, if you look at this, I'm sure you can see my screen right here. This is my brain. I mean, not literally. This is not my literal brain. This is a human brain, and possibly you've stumbled upon some, teachings about the brain. Maybe you realize that when you know that we have three levels of the brain. So the first level of the brain to come into play is the brainstem. If you see my little cursor right there, the brainstem is the survival headquarters. If you have anxiety, if you've been extremely traumatized, the survival brain is the one that is calling the shot, is the one that is in charge most of the time, not the thinking brain. Usually, the thinking brain should be the leader of the psyche. So, the survival brain is in charge of all our vegetative survival activities. For example, your appetite, your homeostasis, your sleep state, and all your social engagement pathways, your entire head regions, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your ability to chew, all the facial muscles, because they are all innervated. They are all they come from the projections in the brainstem, and they innervate, they supply your eyes, the muscles around your eyes, your middle ear, where you filter out low frequency range of predators, so that you can hear properly the high frequency range of the human voice. By the way, this is disrupted in autism. That is why most autistic brains have issues connecting to the environment, because the inner ear, the middle ear, is not filtering out the low frequency uh, bandwidth. So most of the communication is lost in the low frequency levels. A lot of them cannot separate the human voice from the background noises. So, but that's not the only one. The muscles in your neck, the muscles in your shoulders, they are all supplied from the brainstem, and all of those things could go wrong if you've been extremely stressed, or if you've been overly exposed to trauma, especially from childhood. So you could have eyes issues, you could have hearing issues, you could have a throat or neck, it could be stiff neck, or it could be frozen shoulders. People don't know that those regions could be actually connected to stress. There are stress-induced psychosomatic conditions that could come from the fact that the brainstem has overly sensed cues of danger in your environment. So it closes up. As supposed to be open up, it closes off into a defense state, not in a socially engaging state. And we have the middle part of the brain, that is the limbic system, and the limbic system right here is the seat of your emotions. That is where hormones regulating hormones, inhibitory hormones, and accelerating hormones are produced. That is the seed of bonding, bonding towards others and towards yourself. And studies have shown that this part of the brain is hugely affected in trauma, in stress, especially the hippocampus right here. Look at the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the memory center, but it doesn't just do memory, it does learning. So if you've gone through trauma in childhood, you could have issues with learning. We know that trauma and learning difficulty, they comorbid very regularly. And also, the hippocampus is in charge of your stress regulation, being able to regulate your internal state. But studies have shown that overexposure to stress chemicals will disrupt the functions of the hippocampus. So your memory will have issues. Uh, you have issues learning, forming new neurons, and forming new neural networks in the brain that's supposed to capture new learning, new experiences. And also, you have issues regulating emotions. Of course, we have the outer layer of the brain, which is the latest part of our neurotechnology. The studies have shown that it's also affected if he's been overly exposed to stress chemicals. Your most significant focus in life should be how to reduce your own cortisol levels. Cortisol, which is the primary stress hormone, is the major nightmare of the brain. It degenerates brain cells. It depresses the immune system function so much that your body is now exposed to foreign invaders. Cortisol levels will devastate the entire autonomic nervous system, high cortisol levels. So you want to make sure that you are cooperating with your own program for stress relief all the time. Go in nature, don't take things too seriously. If it's not a matter of life and death, let it go. Just take a deep breath and say, I let that go. I just let that go. Find a whole bunch of outlets for frustrations that are legal, that are socially acceptable. Consume, adapt yourself, put yourself in a state where you are constantly elevating your parasympathetic nervous system, your relaxation response. It pays and it helps. Let's see whether there's a question here. Is there a link with a traumatic birth with anxiety later in adulthood? So Oscar is asking, is there a link between a traumatic birth and anxiety? Now, what we know is that we have a huge interaction between the environment and biology, life experiences, and genes, genetic predispositions. So there's a constant interaction, very you know intricate interaction between genes and environment, biology and experiences. Now, but experiences don't just start when you are born. No, experiences start when you are formed in the womb, because now you are sharing environmental factors with your birth mother, with the mother that carries you, that was carrying you. So studies have shown that all the major vital signs of the fetal brain, i i they are mirroring the vital signs of the mother. In other words, if the mother is going through turbulent times and going through adversities, when you are carried in the womb, the elevated glucocorticoid levels, such as cortisol or adrenaline, in the mother's bloodstream will be mirrored by the developing baby's bloodstreams. In fact, studies have shown that the circulating cortisol levels will be used as a calibrating factor to upregulate the stress quotient of that baby. So somebody might say, well, but I know my child since I gave birth to him. He's been all anxious. He's always anxious. So it must be it must be genetic. Well, there must be some genetic. There could be some genetic blueprints downloaded from the mother or from the father, or from the both of them, or even from the previous generations. But also there could be some environmental factors that happened during the conception before the birth. So either it's a prenatal condition or postnatal. Studies have shown that the first 7 years of life very critical with regards to the bonding, the emotional bonding within the primary caregiver and the neonate, in other words, the baby. So that could be a stressor if the primary caregiver was not available, was distant, was uh, was abusive because they were going through problems themselves. Chances are those lack of emotional achievement will traumatize that little baby, and that means exaggerated anxiety center. So it's a combination between genetic and environment, but all of them will feed into the anxiety state. The anxiety center will be upregulated, will be increased, or will be decreased, depending on the nature of the relationship between the environment and genetics, and also between the baby and the primary caregiver. So you're right that there's a strong link. If there's a traumatic birth, so that's trauma right there. If the situation that surrounds the birthing process is traumatic, the baby will feel that, especially if there's some kind of oxygen deprivation to some vital parts of the brain that could affect the inflammation levels that will be started right from the early age, which could be very hard to normalize. And and that's a very strong connection there as well. So good, good, good. So I hope you are able that has been very useful. Let me see whether that's in the question. What time is it? Is it? It's 3:13, 14. And I think we're supposed to finish for maybe we have another 14 minutes or 10 minutes. Let me just see. Yes. Yes, so that is that. So Oscar, I hope that is useful. That's useful. Just comment and say it's useful. If you have any other follow-up questions, let me know. So as I was explaining, what is very critical is to focus on relaxation response. Now, you do not have to have all the answers to your trauma before you can start to participate actively in your own relaxation response. If we cannot reduce the stress levels on a daily basis, they will complicate, they will compound until they start to affect us and degenerate cells in the brain and depress the, the immune system to the extent that we start to have issues. We know that autoimmunity could react to over elevation of our inflammatory pathway. So if you have high inflammations as a result of stress and anxiety, so that means the immune system, killer cells, natural killer cells, are extremely aggressive, but they are underfunded because other parts of the immunity has been suppressed. So they can be so tired that they cannot recognize what tissues belong to self and what tissues belong to non-self. So they can attack your own tissues, your own organs. It's known as autoimmunity. I'm sure you know that. It's because of the excess activation of the immune system function. So you have high inflammatory campaign going on, but there's less funding coming into the entire immune system center to fund the adequate expenditures of energy. because a high cortisol level stress has depleted some regions of the immunity. And because before you know it, we start to have what is known as the friendly fire attack. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this has been useful. It's Wale Oladipo. We try to do this once a month as a way of giving back to the community, just to support people, to let them understand that it is possible to transform mental health. It is not easy, but it's not your fault. You cannot continue to blame you and blame yourself into recovery now. You need you to be on your own side. You need self compassion. And the gateway to self compassion is self realization. The gateway to self realization is right knowledge. And that's what we're doing. The more you know, the less fear you can accept. So it's a pleasure. I just want to show you some other things that we have on our website, just in case you're looking for other resources. This is our mindbodybreakthrough.net. It's our website, mindbodybreakthrough.net. I'm going to share that again. Mindbodybreakthrough.net is our website. So we have a whole bunch of resources here. You can see that's me right there, helping some kids, some school children. Now, if you scroll up, you go to the bottom, you see a whole bunch of workshops coming up from October 1. The government has given us the go ahead to have live events. So we have our regional workshops from Edinburgh to Stoke-on-Trent, all the way to Leicester to London, and we have a number of trainers that help us to do that. But if you scroll up again, you go down, you see some online workshops that you can actually tune in, just like this. I use this platform for online events. If you want to know more about some of these subjects and you've not been to some of these courses before, treating chronic stress is an online webinar. We have some marketing workshops going on for practitioners who want to expand their business. We have the online treating generalized anxiety and panic. We have the online webinar coming up on trauma, the brain and recovery. We have the healing complex trauma coming up, CPTSD. If you've never attended the two of them, I recommend that you attend the trauma first, the trauma course first, because the healing complex post-traumatic stress disorder builds on the trauma course. It goes deeper. Of course, this is what we're doing today. If you know anybody, I think we're doing another one in October. I couldn't fit any date in September for some reason for now, unless we cancel some other events. So, but there's one in October if you want to sign up for somebody that has a question. Then we have the treating intrusive thoughts is a very popular course, and the inner critic. And we have the understanding and managing ADHD and anxiety coming up. These are all webinars. Now, for OCD, we have a dedicated course for OCD, treating obsessive compulsive disorder. So if you want to learn more, you can jump on some of these courses. And if you want to attend any of the live workshops, if you've looked through and we're doing some of them in your area, you might want to, perhaps, you might want to join. Maybe we'll see face to face there. We have a whole bunch of online courses also that you can take at your own time. Some people find this to be the best way to learn. You know, they pause, they take notes, they go all over the course, all over again and then again and again. You have unlimited access, different topics. And if you go onto the books, some of you like to read, taking your books on holiday. This is our trauma book, contains added information that you can't even find on live events because I sat down to write that. So more information that we cannot condense into a live workshop, and we have a whole bunch of other books that we can ship into your house, or we can you can download the PDF version straight away. So that is that. Now, if you go on the blog session, you'll be able to see some little videos that I've been creating to encourage our followers. uh, especially during the lockdown. Now, if you have OCD and anxiety, grab this meditation and listen to it for 21 days. It's very, very powerful. This meditation to ease COVID-19 OCD and anxiety. Listen to it. If you're a practitioner, you can, if you click through, you can download the script that I wrote to record the full meditation. Okay, and from here on, you see other little talks that I've done to keep encouraging people, especially during the lockdown. These are some previous question and answer sessions that we've done, full session like an hour, and different other questions of other participants that I answered. So if you have time, I want to catch up on that as well. So a bunch of um information right there. So Mwala Ladipo has been wonderful sharing with you. Those of you who are watching online, I hope this has been very useful to you. So thank you so much. I'm going to be signing off. I'll share this to on your page so that some people can just watch it straight away. And for you to share it, if you're with me on Zoom, you have to go on our Facebook page, Mind Body Breakthrough, because it's live there. So if you share directly from there to your own page, other people that might benefit from a talk like this will be connected. So it's wonderful sharing with you. Keep going. Let's keep going. All the very, very best. Signing off. Bye bye. Bye bye.